My channel. Today we continue our journey creating a Flask blog from scratch. This is day 11 of 100. Today I'm talking about followers and following and all about users following each other. Yesterday I talked about how to make a form accessible to the blind using screen readers. And unfortunately, I kept trying to fix bugs and errors that were coming up after I posted that video yesterday. And I seem to have a lot of problems with JavaScript. I don't know if it has to do with me not familiar with JavaScript language, or it has to do with the fact that Flask and JavaScript are not compatible, or it is tricky to make them compatible. Because of that, I made a couple of changes. The first thing I made is that I essentially removed the dynamic aspect of the form being shown in the page, because I was having problems with the form not being accessible to the screen reader, or sometimes it is, but some of the information is not being executed, like Python functions is not called. So I was having problems with the dynamic aspect of the form, and because of that, I removed all JavaScript code and I replaced it with simple fetch call that I call the user page. Whenever the user searches a username input field, it will grab the entire page rather than editing and updating a specific section of the page, which is obviously not modern day apps like Twitter. You only update a specific area of the page. You don't update the entire page. I will be working on it. I will probably fix it sometime in this week, and I will let you know. But today I want to talk about followers and following functionality for our app, and I will tell you what I did, and I will summarize the things I did so that you understand. The code will always be in the description below, so if you want to run the code yourself, you can go to my GitHub account, find day 11, and clone the project and run it in your machine. So the first file that I edited is the models.py, which is the main database file for our application. So at the top, I created a relationship for the followers. Since the user table is referencing itself, we have to create this relationship to track which users any given user is following. We get the follower ID, the followed ID, and these two fields will give us all the users any particular user is following. So inside the user table, I added the followed table. This table will essentially track the other side of the followers. It will track the users that this particular user is following. And similarly, we get the followers, we get the followers ID, the followed ID, and we also create a back reference to the followed ID. So this essentially will give us all the users that this particular user is following. This function inside the user table will allow us to add any particular user to the following list of the user. It will first check if the user is already in the followed list, and if it's not, it will add it. And here I created extra table, but it's just I created just to track. I just created this as a way to grab extra data for the events, for the follow unfollow events that's going on. So this is the follow function. This is unfollow function, which we essentially reverse the previous function. We check if the user passed into the function is already part of the following list, followed list, and if they are already following the particular user, then we remove it, and then we record the event here, because later in this class later we will call the recent unfollower, the recent users that any particular user has unfollowed. This class will give us that. So this function will check if any particular user is inside the followed list, and if it is, it will return a list. It will return, I should say, it will return the user. And here, this function will return the recent users that any particular user has followed. It will query the followed event table, and it will check the last 10. I set to 10. Last 10 users that a particular user has followed. You can add it to, you can make it 20 or 50 or whatever number that you want. I set it to 10, and it will be descending order, so that we know we get the most up-to-date 10 items. And here is the recent followers, the recent users that followed any particular reason. Get the last 10, up-to-date 10. And here is the recent unfollowed by user. We get the last 10 users that any particular user has unfollowed. And here is the recent unfollowed user. We also track how many users that unfollowed this user. We basically track in both sides of the follower relationship. Here is get a following count. It will return us the following count of the user. Here is a mutual function. This function will return to us if two users they are following the same user. That is how the mutual function works. Max follows Paul. Test follows Paul. So if Max goes to test user profile, this function will return that both Max and test have a mutual. They have a mutual following. They have a mutual following. They both follow Paul. So this function will give us the mutual of any two users. If they don't have any mutual, then this will return empty list. And this function will check if any particular user has a mutual with another user. And this property is called computed computed attribute, which is a way to call this function without using the parentheses. When you want to call this function is online, if you add the at property, you wouldn't have to add the parentheses. You can leave it out. So it's online is essentially checking if the current user is online. It's checking that. And here is the password, and to check password, here is are they friends? So we are checking if two users are following each other, and if they are, we set it to friends. Here is the follow event table that I created, and this table will collect the follower ID, followed ID, the action that the event is about, follow, unfollow, the timestamp that the event happened, the follower and followed the person that has been followed and the follower. It will return this one. So this is all I did in the models.py, the main database file in our application. So I then went to the routes in the user's blueprint. I added a lot of functions for following, unfollowing. So here is the user follow a function. So we take a username, we query from the database, and we essentially have an empty form because we are not taking any user from the form. We're not taking that. The user that we want to follow is already passed to the function here. So we already have the user, so we don't need to get the user through the form. But when the form is submitted, we want to check if the current user is following the past user, and if they are already following, then we unfollow them. So for example, if someone followed a person and then they immediately then clicked the button, then that would reverse the previous action. It will unfollow it. So here we record the unfollow event. We record the follower ID, which is the current user. We record the followed ID, which is the user that we want to follow, and we record the action, which is unfollow. And here is the submission to the database, and here is the commit and flash. And if the current user is not following, that means that it is the first time that they saw the page, or the first time that they want to follow, then we want to follow them. We don't have to unfollow or do anything to that. And we also record this here. And unfollow function is the same thing, except we reverse the functionality. We check if the current user is following the user, and if that's true, then we unfollow them and we record the event. And if the user is not following the user, but they click the unfollow anyway, if there is an error or some bug that shows unfollow to a user that the user doesn't follow, then we show a flash message telling them that you're not following this user, so don't try to unfollow them. And here is the function that will return any given user and their followers. Here is the following list for any user. Here is the search function that we talked about yesterday. We haven't used this much in this tutorial because I was having trouble with the form and JavaScript with running the functions, some functions, and the accessibility aspect. So that would be it for the routes file in the user's blueprint. What else did we do? We inside the user.html in the user's template. Let me start at the top. I created a couple of special CSS files to make the page look a little bit nicer. So here is the call for them. We are calling the static folder inside the user's blueprint. We're not calling the global static folder because that applies to all the blueprints. We are not interested in that. We are interested in the one that only applies to the user's blueprint. And Here is the regular HTML. We show the ARIA label for screen reader compatibility, and we tell the screen reader that this is a user profile and post. And here's also another ARIA label telling the current user and the username. And here I created a little div telling the above the search input that tells us the current logged in user, and if they want to go to the specific page of that user. And here is the form for the search. Essentially, we take the username from the form. We're not calling the user that will return the JSON. We're not calling that. So here I remove the action here. We are just taking the username, and I have a simple JavaScript at the bottom of this file that will change the address bar. It will swap the username. That way we get a new HTML page associated with that username. And here is the input with the ARIA label and the ARIA descriptions for all the screen reader compatibility, and the role even. And here is the button to submit the form. Here is, I don't think I have added any suggestions to the form as the user types something. That's a little bit tricky for screen readers, and I have to. I will research it. I will research it, and I will probably implement a full solution in the future. Here is the article for the main page, and here we have another form, and this form is a way to change the profile, the profile of the user. If the user owns the profile, then they can change the picture that they have here. And we have a profile form. Here is the hidden tag that we need, that form WTF needs, Flask WTF. And here's the image of the user already, the image that they have. And we only give permission to change the image if they own the profile. Here is what is checking if current user is equal to user. Otherwise, we skip the upload image. And here is the same thing. We check the owner of the profile. Here is the section for username, stats, and bio of the user, and I check if the current user is equal to user. If the user that's looking at the page is the owner, if that's the case, I show you. Otherwise, I show the username. Here, I check if the user is online, and if it is, like, remember I told you here, we don't need to use the parentheses because we are using now computed attributes in the user class. So now we are using as if it is a field of the class. So if the user is online, we show them that, and if they are not online, we show them offline. And the online and offline in our case would be 5-minute window. If any user was online within a 5-minute window, they are online. Otherwise, they are offline. This is probably not a good idea for a real-world social media application because those they track up to the millisecond. So probably when we send this code to a production server, when we send it to a remote server, we will fix it, this area. But now I just want to demonstrate it to show you. Here we check if the user is current user. Probably I'm repeating a lot of code, so this is not a good style for. This is not a good coding style because any time that you see yourself repeating lines of code, you probably are missing something, or you are inefficient in some way. So the problem I have is that I'm doing the code snippet by snippet. I'm not doing it at once. So this is why I'm repeating a lot of unnecessary code, because I'm working in one section at a time. So probably like when we finish the code, we will do an entire video optimizing the style, the coding style. The functionality wise, the application works, but there's a lot of like repeated content, a lot of repeated code, which is not a good way to to operate. Because if you want to share this code with other programmers, they will be annoyed. They will be annoyed, and I don't want you to be embarrassed by my code. So probably at the end of this series, we will dedicate an entire, maybe one video or two, to cleaning up all the unnecessary lines of code. If the user is not a current user, we don't want to follow ourselves, right? We want to only follow other users. So this is what is checking. If the user that is currently looking at the page, if that user is equal to the logged in user, if it is, then we skip this and we go to this area, which is to edit the profile. If the user is not equal to the current user, then that means the user doesn't own this profile, which means that they can follow other users here, follow other users. And we made sure that the ARIA labels are clearly labeled here. And if current user is mutual, so here we check if two users are following each other, and if they are, we tell the user that you and user and this username both follow this list of users, mutuals in current user.mutuals, and we get the list of users that these two users have in common. And if they have no other user in common, we show that you and this user don't have any mutuals. And here are tabs, and these tabs here are tabs that we want to store the events, the follow, unfollow events. So we show if the user is recent following, how many people that they followed recently. If they don't have any recent following, show the empty div. And if we look a little bit closer here in the event, we get the image of the user, and we get it using the user. Get it the user.thumbnail URL, and here is their name, user.username, and here we say followed. And this second image is the one that they followed. And the way we get their image is to use the follow event.followed. This would store the user object of the user that they follow, and we get the thumbnail URL from that. And here is the alternative text for screen readers, blind people like me. So I made sure that I added the owner of the profile's picture here. Here is the bootstrap rounded circle class to make look the image a little bit better. And here's the width. I made it 64, a little bit bigger. Area hidden, true. And here is the name of the user that this user followed. So if the user doesn't have any followers, the user did not follow any users, we show here. And essentially I repeated for other events as well. I repeated the user recent unfollowed. So we show the user that the users that unfollowed this user. So I essentially like repeated this. Let's test the program. So if we go to the profile, so yesterday what we did is we write a user's name here, like Max, and when you hit enter and submit the form, the JavaScript would essentially replace this area. It would dynamically replace this area, right? But because of the screen reader compatibility and me not understanding how JavaScript and Flask work together, I abandoned that. So now, when you enter a username, here is what's being edited. This username will be replaced by whatever that you enter here. The code that is responsible is at the bottom here. I created a JavaScript simple event listener. So we get the username from the form, and if the username exists, if the username does exist, then we essentially pass this username to the URL. User and then username. For now, we are going to use that. So when you try to search a user, and as you can see, here's the swap. JavaScript essentially swapped the username here. And here we have the username Max online. We can follow Max. And when we hit follow now, we can follow it. It will redirect us to our profile. And if we go to, I forgot to separate. I forgot to separate the stats and the follow unfollow accordion. I will be working on that after the tutorial. Usually this should be outside of the accordion. It shouldn't be inside the accordion. It doesn't make any sense. Our following list, we have one following. So test is our name, and we have Max. So here it says unfollow, right? So if I hit unfollow, it will remove me from their following list. So if we go to their following now is 0. If we go to the who is actually following this user, who's following are 2 people. If we follow this user, then this follow will convert to friends because they are following us and we follow them back. So the condition that we set is if 2 users are following each other, they are friends. So when we click here, follow, we should see friends. If we go back to the followers list, as you can see here, we have friends. And we do the same thing for Paul. If we click follow for Paul and we go back to the follower list, so you can see both of these users, they are our friends because we are following each other. If we go to their profile, our name should be in their following list. So here is our profile. So you can see now the application knows that this profile is owned by me. That's why it shows unfollow. And following. So here is all the recent unfollowed. So test unfollowed Max, test unfollowed Max, Paul, Scotty. We followed all the unfollowed. This will track all the users that we unfollowed. And here is the recent following. Here are the users that we followed recently. Here are our name. Here, test, and we followed Paul, Scotty. We also followed Max, Scotty, and here's the time. The style isn't that great, but I will fix that later. And here is the recent unfollow. People who unfollowed us. We unfollowed. Here, I haven't added recent followers, so it's around here. Let's add the recent followers list here. We say if user recent followers, and we end the if statement here. And if there is recent followers, say event in user recent followers. Let's check if the events are even coming up. So if we refresh it and we go to recent followers, Okay, so the recent followers is empty. Let's log in as another user and follow test. Let's sign in as Max and find test user, and we follow them. We log out. So if we go to recent followers, we have two events. I don't know why we have two events, but let's say follower username, and let's see the username that we followed recently. Max. Max is recorded twice. Why? Yeah, there is a bug somewhere. It's recording Max twice. Let's also get the event action and the timestamp. Timestamp not coming up. Yeah. So the two recent followers that followed us is Max in both situations. For some reason, it is recording twice instead of just one. I will fix that later. Now you know how these stats are recorded. We covered how to follow, unfollow, and also I haven't talked about the mutuals. Here, U means the logged in user test and not test. What? U and test both follow. U is me though. U, okay. If current user is mutuals with user, okay, and current user is not equal to user. Yeah. Now we don't want to see mutuals in our page. When we go to other pages, we want to see the other users. The mutuals has to be contextual. It has to be in other pages, not in our page. You and Max both follow Paul. Is that true? If we go to Paul's page and we look there following, so the test should be test and Max. Yeah, okay. Test and it makes sense. And here you can see I don't get unfollow with the profile that I don't own. I don't own Max profile, so I only get follow. But since I own test profile, I get unfollow. That would be it for this tutorial. Thank you for watching, and I will clean up the styles and the layout for the stats here. And please, if you find this helpful, please subscribe, give this video a like, and I will see you tomorrow for a new topic.